The ISIS terror today and the sectarian terror we faced in the 1970s in Ireland and on the mainland, the cruelty and the random violence that we saw then, seems to be magnified today, maybe by greater savagery and weaponry and greater disregard for life. But the scars the terrorists inflicted remain in Ireland, and they will remain in Manchester. On the train the other night, I found myself sitting next to Jeremy Corbyn's brother Piers. He's an affable man, and very much like his brother, seems to be charming. It was nevertheless a bit difficult to get him to fully tie himself down, and he seemed rather keener to make gnomic comments about his brother than to focus on the more interesting subject of climate change. I hope he doesn't come to live under the shadow of his younger sibling. He's worth so much more than that, and I think it would be exciting to know exactly how he does his weather forecasting, and having lived through 2 earthquakes, I really want to know why he thinks there's a direct link between solar activity and earthquakes. And after all, I know that UKIP, while it might be lacking proper direction under its current chairman, nevertheless agrees with Piers in identifying that something other than man-made pollution is the cause of global warming. Or as Piers would say, global cooling, though in my understanding the one thing leads to the other anyway. But it made me think. I'd been drawing pictures of Jeremy Corbyn for the last week and researching quotations of things he had said. The thing is that even if he seems very nice, even if he seems quiet and unassuming, Piers' brother Jeremy has a very dodgy record. In the 1980s, he was arrested at a pro-IRA demonstration against the trial of the Brighton bomber. And in 1987, just before the IRA bombed Enniskillen, he said that he was happy to commemorate all of those who died fighting for an independent Ireland. He clarified for The Sun that the people he met from the IRA assured him that they were not terrorists. But if they belonged to the IRA, I fail to see how else they could be identified. Is it better to claim to be gullible? Diane Abbott says that she changed her mind when she changed her hairstyle. That's another approach. So, while Piers is clearly urbane, clever, funny, principled, and while I've no doubt that his brother is as well, after all, they both went to grammar school, they both came from a middle-class family after all, but Jeremy has a history of poor decision-making. It didn't matter so much when he was a Labour backbencher, but it matters now. There's a distinction to be made between an eccentric oddball who happens to chatter to people about the weather and someone who cannot be sure whether he's been hobnobbing with terrorists at a time when the IRA was yet to renounce violence. There might be an element of bravery in talking directly to these people, but it's different to endorse the same man who does that for high office. Chattering like this may come naturally to the Corbyns, but there's a big difference between the activities of a weatherman and those of a potential Prime Minister. Of course, a leopard can change its spots. Michelle O'Neill, a Sinn Féin politician, quite rightly condemned the Manchester bombing, said she was shocked, that it was heartbreaking, but she seemed to overlook the fact there'd already been 2 bombings by the IRA in Manchester, leaving 265 people seriously injured. It shouldn't come as so much of a surprise that she was then accused of hypocrisy and pilloried in the press. The second bomb, which the IRA planted in Manchester, was actually the biggest to be exploded in the UK since the Second World War. So the response of the press is not surprising to me. But then why do we seem to have one rule when it comes to an obscure Irish politician, and yet another for a man who wants to be our Prime Minister. I don't know what the appropriate criteria are for dealing with the past. There were, let's face it, 11 people who died at Enniskillen. That brings the number of those who died in Fermanagh up to 112. There was the bombing in Manchester and Newry and King's Cross, Guildford and Woolwich, the Birmingham pub, the Chelsea Barracks, Hyde Park, Ballykelly, Harrods, and of course the Brighton bombing, Lichfield, the Docklands, and then people like Ross McWhirter, Ian Gow, Airy Neve, Lord Mountbatten. So much death, so much injury. But the picture I'm drawing here is of two men, and it is Mr. Corbyn's choice of his shadow chancellor that confirms to me that Jeremy has not in my mind taken on board the possibility that a higher standard is demanded of him or of those who want to hold higher office. People can change, I admire that. I always hope to be better. But Jeremy's choice shows that he's not really changed at all. Because John McDonnell is on record saying that the IRA should be honoured for their armed struggle to bring dignity to both sides. It's not one, it's both of them. You find interesting parallels here with the leader of the opposition in Turkey, a man called Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, who talks about various terrorist groups, presumably talks to various terrorist groups, PKK, DHKPC, and so on, but he refers to them as his friends. It's not a rational approach. In 2015, Mr. Corbyn was asked again and again if he would condemn the IRA murders, but he would not. All bombing may be wrong, but the specifics of a terrorist campaign must also be condemned. Anything short of that risks our future.